Marisol Vega mixed her inks the way her abuela had mixed remedies in the backroom botanica of Rio Piedras. Slow circles, whispered names of plants, a breath of rum to wake the color. The ritual was mostly nostalgia. Modern pigments didn't need folk magic to stay bright. Still, on the night everything changed, she let memory steer her hands. She had just closed La Sirena Roja, the boutique studio she'd opened on the edge of Brooklyn's Sunset Park, when a courier dropped off a small cedar box. No return address, only a scrawled note. Use these well, Hija. Inside lay 6 vials of black, so dense light seemed to fold into it. The next afternoon, a walk-in named Jordan came for a fullback kraken. He was slender but wiry, a bicycle messenger whose calves looked carved out of cable. Marisol filled her biggest cartridge with the new ink. At the first puncture, Jordan hissed, then went rigid. Veins bulged, skin hot. She almost stopped, but he relaxed, whispering, "Keep going, feels wild." 8 hours later, the kraken spread from shoulder to hip, tentacles wrapping his ribs. Its eyes glimmered like obsidian beads, although she had used no white for highlights. Jordan left grinning, a tip large enough to cover rent. The clinic called 2 days later. Jordan had broken 5 ribs in a traffic altercation, not his own. He'd yanked a taxi door off its hinges to pull out a driver who'd clipped a delivery kid. Witnesses swore Jordan fought like a man possessed, shrugging off blows, screaming in a language no one recognized. The phrase "man possessed" lodged in Marisol's skull. She reopened the cedar box, dipped a bamboo skewer instead of her machine, and drew a single prick of ink on her forearm. Nothing. She exhaled, halfway to relief, until the drop crawled, forming a tiny black kraken eye that stared back at her. A sound like distant surf filled the room. She scrubbed skin raw. The mark didn't fade. Marisol didn't believe in demons, but she absolutely believed in what she saw. The ink had agency. She needed answers. Abuela had died years ago, so Marisol went to the next best resource, Efrain Fray Delgado, a retired santero whose botanica doubled as an after-hours domino hall. Fray inspected the vial beneath a bare bulb. "Not pigment," he murmured, chanting an Orisha prayer under his breath. "It's tinta de cello, seal ink, bound essence." He wouldn't touch it twice. "You mark flesh with this, you open a door, something steps through, and the skin becomes its cage." He warned her to destroy the rest. She tried. Fire only made the ink bloom into smoke that spelled her name across the ceiling. Acid hissed, then congealed into thicker, darker sludge. By dawn, she'd succeeded merely in transferring a new tentacle across her own arm. Punishment carved in silence. Exhausted, she locked the vials in a toolbox, vowing never again. The vow lasted 3 days, until 2 men in charcoal suits arrived. They knew her name, her Dominican passport status, and the unpaid fine from an old shop lease violation. The taller one introduced himself as Mr. Finch, a talent scout for a private athletic league. "We're commissioning bespoke body art," he said, "and you come highly recommended." Behind the polite words lay a threat shaped like deportation papers. Marisol agreed to an evening appointment, heart battering her ribs. They drove her to an address beneath the Williamsburg Bridge. Concrete steps descended into a former textile factory, now thrumming with bass. Metal doors opened on a vast amphitheater lit by spotlights that stuttered across cages, the kind used in mixed martial arts, except each was lined inside with mirrored panels. Men and women shadowboxed near them, torsos already covered with half-finished tattoos that moved when the fighters did. Images swimming under skin like fish beneath thin ice. Finch led her to a glassed mezzanine. "We call it the gallery," he said. "Viewers sponsor fighters, place bids on upcoming bouts, collect percentages of streams. But what drives subscriptions is art." He showed her slow-motion footage of a brawler whose chest bore a wolf pelt tattoo. In mid-punch, the inky muzzle snarled, separate from the fighter's flesh, fangs protruding inches beyond epidermis. The opponent's throat split as if torn by something invisible. The crowd roared. "We've had artisans before," Finch continued, "but their inks fade. Yours doesn't. And your passengers give our athletes that extra edge." He winked. "Consider tonight an audition. Marisol's station was a steel stool under surgical lights. They brought her a fighter, Leonel Rojas, 26, former Army Ranger discharged for assaulting a superior officer. His torso bore faded prison tats. He folded onto the stool with military calm. "They said you're the new witch." His voice carried resignation, not scorn. He handed her a phone. The screen showed a photo of a little girl missing her front teeth, beaming over birthday cake. "My niece. The club covers medical for my family. Just make it fast." Her hands shook opening the vials. She sketched a jaguar sprawling across his back. An animal, Leonel said, roamed his grandmother's stories. As the needle buzzed, the feline's eyes ignited emerald. Leonel spasmed, but stayed silent. When she finished, he whispered, "I can feel it pacing inside." Guards escorted him straight to the cage. The first bout pitted Leonel against a heavyweight named Moloch, already inked with concentric rings of fire. The cage locked. A bell clanged. At the first clash, Leonel moved in a blur, claws of black light extending from his fingers. Flesh parted, blood misted. The mirrored panels reflected savage flares of fur and scale, demon overlaying man. Each blow accompanied by a roar, not quite human. The match ended in 20 seconds. Moloch lay crumpled, flamed at flickering like a dying neon sign. Spectators chanted, "Jaguar, Jaguar," waving $100 bills. Finch toasted her with champagne. "Your brand is gold," he said. But Marisol watched Leonel hauled off in chains, eyes feral, pupils vertical slits. Slaves, she thought. I'm branding slaves for devils. She smashed her champagne glass in the restroom until shards embedded her palm. She returned to La Sirena Roja before dawn and Googled every scrap on demonic sigil binding. Folklore offered a slim loophole. What is written can be rewritten. If a sigil is nested within new lines that cancel its geometry, the entity loses anchor. In other words, a counter-tattoo. She needed a subject and time. Time arrived when the gallery announced the Equinox Grand Melee, a live stream rumored to draw 8-figure pay-per-view. They requested Marisol tattoo the final 4 contenders the same night so cameras could capture the process. "People love behind the scenes," Finch said. "Bring your best ink." She smuggled something else. During the weeks between bouts, she'd brewed a new pigment, ground eggshell, sea salt, ash from Palo Santo, and blood from her own still-bleeding palm. Under microscope, the particles refracted light opposite to the cedar box ink, a negative image. She hoped old folk logic knew its math. Fight night arrived like Armageddon in rave drag. Laser strobes, sweat fog, perfume of money, and fear. She set up in a ringed alcove. Leonel was first, jaw clenched, because every match made the jaguar more dominant. She leaned to his ear. "I can free you. Do you trust me?" His nostrils flared. Then he nodded once. She told cameras she was adding war paint to his chest, thick stripes across pectorals. She wove the brushstroke pattern so the angles sliced through the jaguar's anchor runes, fracturing them. The new ink looked off-black, almost charcoal. Steam rose where needle met skin. Leonel bit down on a mouthguard to keep from screaming. When she finished, he inhaled like a drowning man breaching surface. The jaguar's eyes dulled, ink flattening into normal pigment. "Still here?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said. But the doors unlocked. The second fighter was Kwong Li, featherweight but unbeaten, her back hosting a dragon that rippled flame. Kwong had grown vain, demanding embellishment. Marisol proposed delicate clouds to make your dragon look bigger. She hid null sigils in the wisps. Kwong twitched, then sobbed with relief before guards muffled her. The cameras loved the show, chalking sweat and tears up to intensity. Finch signaled approval from the balcony, unaware. 2 fighters freed, 2 to go. Third was Garrison Grim Shaw, product of white supremacist gangs, body already a mural of skulls. She almost left him chained, guilt's calculus whispering that devils deserve devils. Then she remembered Abuela saying, "Salvation is worthless unless offered to all." She laced a single ribbon of counter ink through the skull's teeth. Grim's knees buckled, tears sliding through jailhouse tats. "Mama," he whispered, Last came Valentina Calixta Morales, the gallery's queen, undefeated, prize pot resting on her shoulders. Her demon was a six-winged seraph carved across torso and neck, a cruel irony. Every strike she threw looked sanctified. Cameras zoomed as Marisol approached. Valentina studied her with wary eyes. "I've heard rumors," she said in Spanish. "The others feel different." Marisol didn't lie. "I'm removing the thing that's eating you." "Will it cost me the fight?" "Probably," Marisol admitted. Valentina laughed softly. "I was a teacher. I only joined to clear debts after my school closed. Winning stopped mattering once I heard what the voices wanted." She unzipped her track jacket, exposing the burning seraph. "Do it!" Marisol needed a flourish big enough to hide dozens of null lines. She chose a blooming poinsettia across Valentina's sternum, petals splaying through wings. As the design closed, the seraph flickered, halo shattering like glass. Something shrieked, a sound too high for most ears, but every dog in Brooklyn must have howled. Valentina sagged forward, tears and snot slick on her face. "Thank you," she mouthed. Security escorted fighters to staging. Finch cornered Marisol beside a rolling cart of towels. "What's with the new pigment? Too dull for broadcast." He touched a drying cap of counter ink on the towel. Smoke hissed, blistering his fingertip. Finch recoiled. Eyes narrowed, he reached for his earpiece. Marisol ran. Halls twisted, filled with crush of staff. Someone shouted, "Code Black!" She ducked into the locker bay, barred the door with a bench. Her bag with remaining vials was still at the station. Except she'd poured them into a thermos and stowed it under her hoodie. Time for Plan B. She yanked a fire axe off the wall, smashed the sprinkler mains to set off alarms. Water rained. Strobe lights died. Emergency glow bathed corridors red. Inside the arena, the melee had begun. 15 fighters in one cage. Last standing wins. Marisol pushed through exit doors onto a gantry directly above the cage. Fans screamed confusion at sprinklers and alarms. Demons, now anchorless in some hosts, recoiled or sputtered. Leonel's jaguar slipped half-formed through bars, unable to decide whether it still owned the flesh below. Kwang's dragon belched smoke, but no flame. Grimm's skull halo cracked. Only Valentina's seraph, furious at banishment, roared around her like a tornado of wings. Valentina stood calm in its eye. Finch appeared on the opposite gantry, flanked by guards carrying tranquilizer rifles. "You breached contract," he shouted. "Hand over the thermos." Instead, Marisol unscrewed the lid and upended black ink onto the metal grate. Water from sprinklers diluted it into an oily rain that pattered onto fighters and spectators alike. She spat a prayer learned at 13. "Oshun, cleanse my hands of what I made." The demon ink hit steel, hissed, then sparked as if alive. Sigils flared across the gantry, lifting into a grid that spidered over the entire cage. Every demon wailed, facets of the same chorus. Metal moaned. Mirrors lining the cage shattered outward, turning sandblaster shards on the front rows. Panic stampeded. Security fired, but dart needles ricocheted off the shimmering lattice, now humming around Marisol like a cocoon. The cage floor split, opening a jagged mouth. Heat rolled up from deep concrete, the smell of sulfurous earth. One by one, ink-wrought beasts were sucked toward the fissure, clawing futilely at air, dragged back to whatever dimension they had slipped from. Each left its fighter crumpled, breathing but free. Finch screamed curses until a length of rebar, dislodged by the quake, impaled him through the chest. His body hung like a pinned specimen against the railing. The ground stilled. Alarms continued, distant and irrelevant. The cage door creaked open of its own accord. Marisol climbed down. Leonel met her first, eyes normal brown. "You did it," he said. "We're clear." Around them, fighters rose on shaky legs, some weeping, some laughing hysterically. Valentina emerged last, seraph gone, poinsettia blooming red on her chest like a war medal. She hugged Marisol so fiercely ribs popped. Police sirens neared. The freed athletes scattered, some through service tunnels, some melting into crowds flooding streets. Marisol knew detectives would arrive with questions no one could answer. She followed a maintenance stairwell that spat her onto the riverbank. dawn-tinted skyscrapers pink. The thermos rattled empty in her grip. Leonel caught up, a duffel over one shoulder. "Where do you go now?" "Back to the shop," she said. "Someone will need covering scars." She flexed her inked forearm. The kraken eye remained, but pupil hollow, no longer watching. She wasn't naive. Power like that never vanished entirely. A faint echo lingered behind her heartbeat, a roll of distant thunder promising storms. She would keep mixing inks, but now she knew their names, and they would know hers. Leonel nodded. "If you ever need backup—" "I just might," she answered, surprised to mean it. They walked until city noises swallowed memory of underground cages, each step a line in fresh skin, writing a story no demon could claim.